As you should all be aware, Hillary Clinton crushed Bernie Sanders in the South Carolina primary election this past Saturday, and it didn't have to be that way. I'm going to play a clip from the Roland Martin show, TV News 1, and I'm going to, I guess, make comments intermittently where I agree with Roland or I disagree with Roland. So I'm going to roll this right now.
Thank you so much, South Carolina.
Huge victory for Secretary Hillary Clinton as she crushes Bernie Sanders in South Carolina. Though she was expected to win, it was not clear how big this win would be. 73.5% of all Democrats voted for Hillary Clinton. She wins 39 delegates. Bernie Sanders got 26% and only 14 delegates. The landslide was huge, even more so among black voters. Some 87% of all African Americans actually voted for Hillary Clinton. Sanders is trying to move on as quickly as possible. We head into Super Tuesday tomorrow, where even more major states with big black voters will be on the line.
I am so greatly appreciative because today you sent a message in America when we stand together.
Now, if you take a look at Hillary Clinton giving his victory speech and take a look at all the people behind her, those should have all been black people because they were the ones that actually did, in fact, give her the victory. Though, to be honest with you, in this particular primary, she did win the white vote as well. But the black vote came in, as Roland said, overwhelmingly for Hillary Clinton. As a matter of fact, 97% of the black voters that were approximately, I'm going to say 60 or older, 97% of them voted for Hillary Clinton. So, and those are the majority of your black voters, older African American people. So this could have been avoided.
Too big to break. And tomorrow, this campaign goes national. We are going to compete for every vote in every state. We are not taking anything, and we're not taking anyone for granted.
In politics, on a given night, sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. Tonight we lost.
You didn't lose. You got your ass kicked. And I keep repeating myself, it didn't have to be that way.
Congratulate Secretary Clinton on her very strong victory. Tuesday, over 800 delegates are at stake, and we intend to win many, many of them. Well, we got decimated. That's what happened. Among older African Americans, it was pathetic from our perspective. Not only are we fighting for Super Tuesday, we're looking ahead to California, the largest state of all, New York State. We think we're going to do well in Michigan.
Now, that's a faulty premise, because by the time he gets to California and New York, and I doubt he's going to win New York. He might possibly be able to do something in California. It's going to be game, set, and match. He said that he is going to compete for the majority of the voters. That's not true. There are 11 primaries during primaries and caucuses for Super Tuesday. I believe 2 caucuses and 9 actual primaries. Bernie Sanders is not competing in any primary or caucus below Oklahoma. So he's effectively given up in Georgia, Alabama, and potentially Texas. He's placing all his eggs in the Vermont basket, which he should win, In Massachusetts, which Clinton is now a couple of points ahead, but he did come from way behind. But she may be 1 or 2 points ahead within the margin of error. He's planning on competing in Minnesota, which is a caucus state, Colorado, and as I indicated earlier, Oklahoma. The other 6 states with primaries and caucuses, he's really not making an effort in. So net, bottom line, if he wins major majorities, which he won't, in the states that he's actually campaigning hard in, he would win approximately 250 delegates. If Clinton wins all the states that she's campaigning hard in, that he doesn't win, that would be approximately 500 to 600 delegates. You can't win like that, and we're not even taking into account the superdelegate count, which he's a joke as far as superdelegates are concerned.
Again, huge stakes at play on Super Tuesday as Republicans and Democrats go to the polls. Caucuses, primaries taking place in a dozen states, and it's certainly a make or break time for Bernie Sanders. Let's talk about it right now with Sophia Nelson, journalist, as well as author Ray Baker Media. Folks, when you look at what took place on Saturday, it's clear that, and I said it for a long time, Bernie Sanders, you can't win New Hampshire and then all of a sudden start talking to black folks.
But Roland, I think that's true, but there's another story that's really important out of South Carolina, and that is when you compare the Republican primary and the Democratic primary, 90% of the voters in the Republican primary were white, 67% of the voters in the Democratic primary were black. And so I have a piece this morning on ebony.com talking about the different Americas that we're seeing shape up here. And so I agree with you about Sanders and his lackluster, if you will, ability to attract black people to his campaign. But I think the real story is behind the exit polls about what people wanted out of Clinton. They wanted someone with experience, and if they voted for Trump, they wanted an outsider who was going to change things. It's an interesting dynamic going on.
But again,
see, but the problem, as Roland accurately stated, Bernie Sanders was told more than 6 months ago that he was going to have a major problem in South Carolina, and that he needed to get his ass down there and talk to the people, period. And he has been procrastinating, if you want to use that word, or ignoring the black vote down in South Carolina until after New Hampshire. Well, you can't walk into South Carolina and think that you're going to have any kind of a major impact in 1 month or less when the Clintons have been actively working the black voters, especially in South Carolina, for the past 8 years, because that's where Hillary got her ass kicked by President Obama back in 2008. So the Clintons knew what their problem was, and they worked on it. Sanders, to his discredit, should have realized that he was going to have a problem because of his lack of visible interaction with black people, and have gotten his ass down there 6 months ago to start working the community.
And though, at the end of the day, if you're Bernie Sanders, I'm sorry, you can't get crushed like that among black voters and think that when you go to Georgia, when you go to Florida, when you go to Alabama, Mississippi, at the end of the day, you can't appeal to black voters in Democratic primary. You're not going to even get close to the nomination.
And the interesting thing is that Bernie supporters have been really critical and vitriolic online, particularly about black people. You all should be wanting to support Bernie Sanders. He's the one that's very, very, very patriarchal in the way that they're addressing some of the black supporters who they feel like they should be having.
Well, it's also shameful that Bernie Sanders supporters can't understand that black folks do have brains. See, this is...
See, now that's being disingenuous. See, the problem where I find that to be wrong is that, yeah, black voters do have brains, but they need to be able to get the information that's out there, and they just didn't get it. And Bernie Sanders, to his discredit, didn't put that information out there. He didn't really hammer her on that crime bill. He didn't hammer her on welfare reform. He didn't hammer her on her super predator comments. If he had been hammering her on those items for the past 6 months, this would have been a completely different story. Now, I'm not going to say that he would have won the black vote, but he damn sure would have cut it down when he exposed all of her warts. So, yeah, black voters, are some of the most intelligent voters out there, but there has been no exposure of Hillary Clinton's warts for them to be able to actively consider. And obviously, a lot of people didn't go in there digging for those warts.
This is the nonsense that happens every 4 years. When people will say, oh, black folks are voting as a monolith, why are they doing it? No, African Americans are some of the most astute voters in the country. They are voting for what they believe in and their policies. And so when people somehow think that, oh, they're blindly following Hillary Clinton, no, African Americans are paying attention. So you're talking, and then it was very interesting. We had this debate last week on our show. They were talking about, the importance of millennials. And I said point blank, look, you can spend all your day talking about the numbers of millennials. The numbers of people are irrelevant compared to who is registered and then who turns out.
That's right. And I think black people also trust Hillary Clinton. They know her brand, which when you have
they know the brand that's been portrayed, but do they really know her? And again, I fall back to those 3 items that if you ask the average black person where she was on the 1994 crime bill or welfare reform or the term super predator, where did that come from? I'm willing to bet you dollars to donuts that most black people in South Carolina would have no idea what the hell you were talking about.
Congressman, South Carolina,
Jim Clyburn.
who endorsed her, which they didn't do when President Obama was running in 2008. That was the big difference. Remember, he got the support. And it was interesting also when you look at the poll numbers, 78% as opposed to 87% for Hillary. So she had a higher intensity with black voters in 2016 than President Obama did back in 2008.
That's not true. When they were running, that was a three-person primary, and the third person, I believe it was Edwards. He was a favorite son down in South Carolina, so he, I believe, he pulled about 15% of the vote. So if you take away that 15%, and obviously, it all wouldn't have gone to Obama, but I'm willing to bet you a chunk of it would have gone to Obama. So he probably would have been up there somewhere near the numbers that Hillary Clinton just registered.
No, turnout, first of all, was far lower.
Yes.
So turnout. But again, though, Ray, the problem I have is there's a narrative that somehow black folks are just sitting here walking in, pressing a button, as opposed to listening to what the candidate is saying, hearing what their policies are, and being saying, I think this is the best person who can be president. If you keep insulting black folks that way, to me, you're going to pay the price.
Absolutely. And it's funny when sometimes we hear some of our friends on the Republican side saying, well, black Americans are voting against their own interests.
Or say, oh, they're on the plantation.
But we think back to what Randall Robinson offered about the Mississippi truck driver who makes $40,000 a year, who consistently votes Republican, often against his own economic interests. And so there's no conversation in the quid pro quo in that type of way.
What can Bernie Sanders do?
Nothing.
In this short window? First of all, let me tell everybody this here. In about an hour and a half, he's going to finally do an interview in the Tom Joyner Morning Show. And again, a perfect example of the craziness of their campaign. They agreed to do the interview. Then we got a call at 8 p.m. last night saying, oh, we got our time zones mixed up. And then after we blasted them on social media, got a call an hour later saying, hey, he's going to be back on tomorrow. I mean, that's the perfect example. You can't run for on Super Tuesday and you wait to do an interview on the largest urban morning show in America. I'm just saying.
But if you're not a...
Okay, at the time of making this video, I had found out about that Tom Joyner show from Roland Martin here, so I did listen to the radio show, and in my opinion, there was too much music and not enough questions, especially given the stakes that are involved for Super Tuesday. But Tom Joyner has been trying to get this guy on his radio show, which reaches 8 million people, for the past 6 months, as has Roland Martin been trying to get Bernie Sanders on his TV show for the past 6 months. And it was only recently that he was able to get Nina Turner on the show, and she did a really good job. But it's called Too Little, Too Late. He could have been on Tom Joyner's show once a month, every month, and it's a call-in. So wherever he was, he could have called in once a month, every month, to get on Tom Joyner's show, to get himself out there in front of the black community, and he chose not to do so. And he could have done the same thing on Roland Martin's show as far as calling in. Didn't do it and got destroyed.
Astute and not attuned to black voters, which he is not. But we all knew that it would come down to the firewall for Hillary of South Carolina, and it was true. And I think that this is game over for Bernie Sanders. I'm sure he'll win some more states, but I think the black vote, and Roland, as you pointed out, in Georgia and Alabama and even in Virginia and other places, it's kind of over.
But we still have some, but Hillary Clinton does still have some issues, folks, over the week.
Okay, so like I was saying, tomorrow could be game over for Bernie Sanders. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm going out tomorrow, and vote, and I'm going to vote for Bernie Sanders. That being said, I'm a realist, and if he gets his ass kicked in Georgia and Alabama and Texas, like he got his ass kicked in South Carolina, it's game, set, and match.